listening to the Cricket Podcast.
I think it was a disgraceful performance, and I think it should never be permitted to happen again.
That is very good.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we have a double header of thrilling cricket matches to talk about, as England squeaked by Bangladesh with an 8-wicket win and 8 overs to spare, and Namibia, actually this game was quite close, managed to chase down 109 runs against the brave hearts of Scotland. The T20 World Cup, I think, badly needs a couple of games where people score some runs, but we'll be talking about two today where that didn't really happen. I am Jack Hope, and I am joined by Dan Weston to talk about this smorgasbord of cricketing failure.
It seems to me like every time you get me on the podcast, this happens, and it makes me the most negative person in the world.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's good to have your expert insight. So we'll do England v Bangladesh first, because that's where all the money is, and then we will talk a little bit about Scotland v Namibia later in the show. Before we get into all of that, though, our messages for our listeners are that our sponsor is Woodstock Cricket. TCP 25 for 25% off their gear over on their website. We are at the Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram, and we have a Patreon, patreon.com/thecricketpod. If you want to engage with us on Patreon, we chat with people there. We'll always ask your questions if they come through on Patreon. Max and I have a few data files, one for the IPL. We're working on one for the PSL as well, for any Pakistan or PSL fans, you don't have to be from Pakistan, I suppose, to download and pretend to be a cricket analyst with, like we do.
Let's talk about,
yeah, no, exactly. Let's talk about this first match then. Bangladesh took on England, and it wasn't really pretty. Dan and I, we were having a little side chat earlier on today, and I likened the Bangladesh innings to a team scoring 2 own goals in a football match and then deciding to park the bus and protect their defeat. Dan, you won up that and you said it was like a team scoring 2 own goals, parking the bus when they had to win to avoid relegation. It was a pretty tedious affair as they squeaked up to 124. Looking through their batting lineup, nobody did anything exciting until Nasim Ahmed picked up 19 from 9 balls right at the end, hitting Adil Rashid for a couple of sixes to finish with a strike rate in excess of 200 and mean that England had to chase and run a ball. In response, England didn't hang about for too long. They smashed the power play. They continued to smash after that. They slowed down a little bit near the end when Dawid Malan came in and wanted to protect his number one status as international T20 god, or whatever you get for being number one. Jason Roy was good. He hit 61 from 38 balls to send England to a pretty easy win overall. Dan, let's start with the positives here, or at least from the England point of view. Jason Roy actually played a pretty decent innings here. 61 from 38, hit 5 fours, 3 sixes. If you look at his numbers, you can maybe criticise him a little bit as being a guy who doesn't hit as many sixes as the elite level T20 batters. Hit 3 today though. Maybe someone's told him this and he's correcting it. I thought it was a good innings. What do you reckon?
Probably, I thought it was great. It was obviously very, very little you can quibble about that. The fact that he hit a few sixes, which is generally, as you say, untypical of him, is a real positive. Maybe someone's told him about that, or maybe he's just laid into some pretty mediocre bowling, which I thought was unfair today.
Yeah. Okay. So you've on the one hand given, and on the other hand taken away. You said, yeah. I thought it was really good ball striking from Jason Roy. I mean, I think there were actually probably some question marks, and probably some correct question marks about his place at the top of this order, bearing in mind the batting talent England have. Would Alex Hales be better than him, for example? I think that's a legitimate argument you could make. You know, if you keep banging 61 from 38, keep hitting 3 sixes. Well, if you hit a six, what's that? 7-8% of the balls you face, then you're doing a good job, Jason. And you can stick around. It's annoying that we don't have Ross on the podcast, actually, because Ross has met Jason Roy, and somebody asked us about what Jason Roy's like as a bloke, and Ross would have been ideally placed to answer that. But at the last minute, Ross had to duck out, so he wasn't there. That would have been a nice moment of positivity. He met me at a bar. I think, I don't know. I don't think Jason Roy remembers this interaction. Put it that way. But Ross is certainly fond of talking about it. So yeah, he batted well. Let's go back to the Bangladesh innings, because this is probably where the substance of the podcast is. Just before the Bangladesh innings, actually, about 20 minutes before, I think the first catastrophic error of the day happened from a Bangladesh point of view. Dan, is there any evidence whatsoever that Mahmudullah was correct in opting to bat first against England here?
I don't think so. So while it was the early match in the day where there's dew's less of an issue, I mean, when you're playing against a team, you need to look at also what they like doing and what their kind of modus operandi is. And we know that Owen Morgan absolutely loves chasing. I'm struggling really to understand any rationale for this at all. Maybe it was a used wicket and they thought it would get worse. I don't know, but I don't see it at all. I mentioned in my Substack recently that I mean, it's a bit of a strange one. I personally don't believe that Bangladesh, strategy-wise, are very analytics-driven, although there are a lot of people talking about them kind of obsessing with matchups, which is also possibly fair, but it looks like kind of like lazy matchup planning, if you like, in terms of, it's a left-hander, we'll just throw some random off-spinner. I think Ross the other day talked about the fact that he bowls a bit of off-spin and Mahmudullah would have picked him to bowl a bit of off-spin. And so, yeah, I think they've got a lot to learn in that kind of analytics planning space. So yeah, that's a bit of a negative for them. I don't see the point in them batting, and I think as it happens, as a spectacle, the match would have been a lot better if England had batted first as well. So from a kind of a neutral's point of view, it would have been much better if England batted first. I'm sure Morgan was delighted when where Bangladesh inserted themselves.
I bet he couldn't believe his luck. In the chat, Akash has just pointed out that the record in the Super 12s portion of the tournament is now 8-1. In favour of the team chasing. England, as you said, like to chase. Bangladesh, not the strongest batting lineup in the world. I think there's a very limited scope for them to bat England out of this game by batting first. So it was really, I mean, it was really, really bizarre. I mean, it's like people talk a lot about the toss having like huge impacts on certain matches in history. Everyone always goes on about Nasser Hussain, was it at Adelaide or something like that? Conveniently forgetting that like it was England away against the best Australian team of all time, and they were going to lose that match whether they batted first, bowled first, or just fucking drove home in the car and didn't bother playing the match, forfeited. But I think in T20 cricket, particularly in conditions that do seemingly favour the team bowling first so much, to actively choose to go down this route is astonishingly stupid.
Well, you've got two things that we can discuss here, right? And I don't know how this kind of combines into a percentage chance, but it's not pretty. Okay, so let's say, for example, there's like a 70-30 chasing bias in these matches, right? It's probably not a million miles away from where we're at, right? And then and I wrote on my Substack the other day, if you choose not to hit in a match, like you're not playing with intent, and you know that 85% of teams win the match when they have a higher boundary percentage than their opposition. Basically, that's like having a coin that you know 85% of the time is going to land on heads, and then you call tails. And Bangladesh have basically done it twice. So not only did they bat first, but they didn't want to hit either. So, yeah, good luck to them winning this match.
Yeah, it was a really poor effort with the bat. I'm just counting them up. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They hit 10 boundaries in 10 fours and 2 sixes. Yeah, so that's a 10% boundary rate, which is pretty miserable in the first place.
And that was kind of glossed on by the fact that their number 8 and their number 9 hit 5 boundaries in 19 balls.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Their top 7 hit 7 fours in 87 in 100 balls. 7%.
I'll be honest, I genuinely didn't understand what they were trying to do. So, we watch a lot of cricket. We watch a lot of T20 cricket. If you go through the whole IPL, the whole of the beginning of this tournament, we watched loads of the 100. I probably watched 60 days of T20 cricket in the last 90 or so in my life, and I don't think I've seen a team as clueless as they were today. It was like I don't know. Maybe they just don't want to be there anymore. Maybe they literally don't understand how this format works. Maybe their analyst is an idiot. Maybe they've got a coach who won't listen to the analyst. There are lots of things that could be causing this confusion. But I don't understand how you can possibly think that trying to post a total of about 120, 130 against England is going to be successful more than 1 in 25 times or something like that.
Yeah. And this is the key point we're trying to make here. So I think it's probably fair to say, Jack, isn't it, that we do get some criticism from listeners that we're too negative towards players and teams and stuff like that. And I want to kind of clarify this point of view here, right? Look, if you're crap, but you try, you have intent, you have good plans, because having good plans costs nothing, right? It really doesn't. If they had gone out today and tried to hit like the West Indies and got rolled out for 55, fair play to them. At least they had to go. They knew what they were doing. They didn't die wondering. They put their balls on the line and it didn't work out, okay? Right? But they didn't do that. They just nurdled their way to 1, 2, 4 and it's like, oh, well, go on in England, you can knock that off in 14 overs. I mean, they just had no plan. I've got no issue with someone not being good enough. That's no issue at all. It's when you're not good enough and you don't try. What's the point? What was the point of them even turning up today?
Well, that's sort of the point I'm driving at. A few people in the chat are sort of saying, wasn't it just England bowling well, or I don't think Bangladesh could have won against England. In T20 cricket, Bangladesh v England are better. They will win a lot of the time. But probably Bangladesh going into that match have got a 20% chance of winning before a ball is bowled, before the coin is tossed. The first thing they do at the toss is basically give 5% of the chance of them winning to England. They immediately go, we'll take this 20% and we'll have 15%, please. Maybe it might have been worth even more than that. Yeah. And then they go out and bat, and they've got 15. Think about it as equity in the game, yeah? They've got 15% chance of winning this match, and then they bat in a way that over by over just ebbs away. Now, I get, they lose 2 wickets inside 3 overs. I get that Moeen Ali's bowling really well in the power play, and that obviously wasn't in their plan. And then they lose their star in the power play too. But they lose their star in the power play at 26 for 3. They've just not attacked the power play. This isn't. Don't
forget, this is a star who hits about 12% boundaries and less than 2% sixes, though. So he's not exactly going to bow them out with 70 or 30 balls. Sure.
Sure. After that, though, they have a little mini recovery. They're up to 63 by the time Mishfiqur Rahim is out in the 11th over. And they just sort of wilt from there. They don't score. They continue to sort of ponder around. There's a lot of innings here where... Well, there's 2 innings. Let's use these as the main examples. Rahim and Mahmudullah, 24 and 30 balls each, both score under a run a ball. Now, England did bowl well. We absolutely have to say England bowled well. England's plans were good. Liam Livingstone, Moeen Ali are better spin bowlers than I think a lot of people around the world will appreciate. They are good auxiliary spinners, if you like. You can get
Rajasthan
4 overs.
Liam Parag's better than Livingstone, I think.
Well, Rajasthan are wrong. Rajasthan are wrong about a lot of things, and that's another thing they're wrong about. But those 2 innings there, they're 2 batters that if you face 30 balls, you've got to be scoring 45 runs, mate, or 40 runs at least in this game to give your side a chance. If you face 24 balls, you can't just hit 1 boundary. Mahmudullah, the captain, has hit 1 boundary of 24 balls. That's just not good batting.
Yeah, and then you as well. Comedy run out.
Well, yeah. He's involved in a comedy run out, and then they leave themselves in a situation where Tymal Mills, and we've said this on the podcast a few times, who is one of the best death bowlers in the world, and also barely anyone will have seen in the world. So you've got like a double whammy here of a guy who is very good and people have got very little experience against. You're leaving your 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11 to bail you out of trouble. Like you say, if you're top 6, top 7, collapse in a heap, and you're 30 for 6, then fine. A 30 for 6 at the end of the 8th over, fine. Like probably within that you tried your best. But I just don't. I don't think they did try their best. They lose their 6th wicket right at the end of the 15th over on 83, still under a run of ball. It's batters in this top 6, in this top 7 had a chance at putting a score up and sort of didn't try, and that's a bit sad. Now we did actually get asked a really interesting question on this, and I don't want to attack Bangladesh. I like Bangladesh. I think they play good cricket. I think they're probably their strong suit is ODI cricket, to be honest. Where I think players like Shakib's can balance the team really nicely, and I think they may be a little bit better at that. But Ayat asks, how can Bangladesh improve in overseas conditions? And I think there's first of all, there's a really easy thing they can do. They can start playing on home surfaces that are a little bit more balanced, because you're just not. They're batting in a way today that would have made sense if you were playing in Dhaka. Like 126 might have been a challenge for England in Dhaka. But it's not on any kind of a neutral surface. And to be honest, this wasn't even really a neutral surface. It was probably a bowler-friendly surface. But you can't... 126 just roadkill if you're not playing on a sandpit. So that's the first thing you can do. And the second thing, is probably deeper than that. It's probably around player development and where you send teams on A tours and where you send your young players when they're 18, 19 to get a little bit of experience before they break into the first 11s. And that for a nation for Bangladesh might be a little bit difficult. It's definitely harder for them to do that than England, Australia, and India. But at the least, you can try and make some of your venues a little bit more neutral at home. Dan.
Yeah, so I think that based on and I've heard several instances of this, based on the fact that they've got a lot of overseas coaches in their dugout, they're obviously not short of a few quid to board, and I've heard that the board are pretty well off compared to a lot of other countries as well, Bangladesh. So what they need to do is they need to invest in hitting coaches to work through the age group teams and look at this as a kind of infinite game, long-term process, basically, where, you are not going to turn Muhammadullah into Andre Russell. You accept that. That's not going to happen. But there are 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds who, if you coach them early enough, you can turn them into the next version of Andre Russell. If they've got the raw talent and they've got power and they've got intent and they're coached well, you could do that. So it's all about looking at it from a long-term process. And I don't see that there's those processes involved in Bangladesh cricket right now at all.
I think the other thing
short-termist.
I think the other thing you can do, and you can certainly level this criticism at Sri Lanka, and I know a little bit more about Sri Lankan domestic cricket than I do Bangladeshi domestic cricket, to be honest. But the level below international cricket, whatever that is, the domestic top level, make sure those pitches are even so that you promote aggressive cricket so that... two things happen. One, you have a higher chance of finding next Andre Russell because next Andre Russell can actually perform on those surfaces. And two, when you do go away from home, you actually have an idea of who's any good on a surface that isn't a total disaster area. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's fine playing this team at home against whoever will turn up, the Kiwi B team and the Aussie B team. You will roll them. You'll beat them 5-0, 5-1 all the time. But you don't learn anything from that. You don't learn who is capable of hitting sixes all the time, of having a boundary rate over 20%. You don't understand those things. You don't pick up on who has built those skills unless you are playing in conditions that roughly replicate how cricket is played in many other places. No, I'm not saying that. I don't. Dan, you probably know a little bit more about the Bangladesh Premier League. What happens in the Bangladesh Premier League? What's a good score there?
Well, I can tell you exactly what happens on there. But I think there's one venue that's poor, and then the other ones aren't too bad. Now, the biggest problem, I was going to go and talk on about that, so I'm really glad you brought that up, Jack, is that I think it was around 2018, the BPL got really good. Like, there was 4 overseas players per team, and there was a lot of money thrown at good overseas players. And I think there was one year where, like, Chris Gale and De Villiers played in the same team and stuff like that. Like, I think it was at Rangpur. It got to a stage where the BPL was actually attracting better caliber of overseas players than the Big Bash, which was being played at a similar time in the calendar. And then the year afterwards, all the funding kind of appeared to get withdrawn, and they just went for a load of jokers as overseas players the year after. And they haven't played it since because of COVID and probably various other wranglings. But the point is that in the BPL, the strategy was obvious. You have 4 overseas, and you're picking minimum 3 of them as batters because you can't rely on the local batters.
Yeah,
and it's been the same in PSL to a slightly less degree. Now they're starting to produce a few better hitters in PSL, like local hitters in PSL. But there's not any really in Bangladesh at all, and this is the crux of the problem, is that say like the BPL next year they said, right, okay, we've got all this money, we're going to throw it, and if you're a platinum player, you get 200,000 USD or something like that, yeah, which is going to attract big names, right? Now, it's going to be the same. Any team who's like got remotely decent planning is going to go, oh, okay, well, look at this. None of the local players can hit, so we're going to get 4 overseas batters or 3 and plus a batting all-rounder or something like that. And just because they know that the player pool has just not got those type of players in it. Whereas there's probably like a gazillion decent left-arm spinners that you can find, and probably the odd pacer. So you're just going to go Bangladesh bowler heavy and overseas batter heavy. And the same problems are going to manifest themselves over and over again until you have that structural change.
Yeah. And I think if they... I don't know. I mean, I think it will... whatever they're doing in Bangladesh might continue to work in ODI cricket because you need a slightly different player there. But the players that they have put out at this World Cup just aren't really up to it. It's the honest truth. Yeah, it's they're not really up to it, and they don't really know how to play. It's a double whammy, which is a shame. If you're watching on our live stream or whatever, drop us say hello, etc. And if you're listening on, we said this on the last podcast, we haven't had a review for a while over on iTunes. So if that's where you're listening, give us a review. As long as it's positive. If you would review it, if you're going to review us and give us less than 4 stars, then hold off. That's the
only 4.
Well, less than 5 stars. If you're not going to give us a 5-star review, don't bother. It's not worth it. You're just dragging our average down. 4.7. That's higher than my Uber rating.
I've got a bad Uber rating as well. You know, I think it's because I didn't tip a couple of people and they got really angry with me.
I didn't think they'd found out about the tips. I don't always tip on Uber. I will be honest.
I always try to be pleasant to these Uber drivers, and I haven't got a 5-star Uber rating. And it actually really upset me when I got my first negative one, or like dragged it down from 5.
I didn't know what I did wrong. I want feedback. You can give feedback on the driver, can't you? You can be like, I don't know, didn't wear a mask or whatever. You can't. I had an Uber driver, Dan, the other day. I'm not joking here. Had his phone propped up on the dashboard in one of those holsters. He was watching Netflix while he was driving me around South London. Yeah.
Was it any good? What was he watching?
He was watching this. Swedish comedy show called Swedish Dicks, which is about 2 Swedish. It's about 2 Swedish detectives that have to go to Los Angeles to solve a case, and they're like idiots. They're private detectives. It's weird. It's weird. But more alarmingly, he was driving around. He was like going around roundabouts and stuff, with the show on, laughing away, like filling us in with I was with my girlfriend, giving us the context to the show and like what was happening and why that was funny and what he liked about it. Not
That's
right.
incredible.
It was absolutely stunning. But it's great multitasking. 5-star I gave him.
Was it on subtitles or was it English?
It was in English.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you didn't have to read
And subtitles. Vic London asked, "Was it good?" Yeah, it was alright. It was
So
good.
you haven't put it on your watch list then?
It'd be good. I think it'd be good background Netflix. If you're like making dinner or whatever, and you don't want to get stuck into an episode of Succession. Then
I'm gonna watch that. Is that any good? Have you seen
mate,
that?
it's so good. Yeah,
I'm gonna watch it tonight.
Succession is the best thing I've seen on TV for ages.
Is it? Okay,
Yeah.
We completely digressed, but I love these chats. I love these.
Yeah,
Chats. Wouldn't it be amazing if your taxi driver was watching Moneyball?
Yeah, it would be good. Then I could have. Yeah, we could have got him on this show.
Or Cricket Fever.
Yeah. Have you seen actually on I think it's an Amazon one. There's an Indian TV show about the IPL.
It's Prime.
Yeah.
Is it about KKR? I'm gonna watch that. Yeah.
It's about a fake IPL team. It's a bit. I think it's a bit like Dream Team. Do you remember that? The noughties. Yeah. I think it's a bit like Dream Team. Ross watched it with his housemates that didn't like cricket. The first scene, according to Ross, is just like quite a graphic sex scene before a player is having sex with a groupie before he goes out to bat in an IPL game. I think. Just get a quick one in. So it's that's we were gonna have it as a forfeit.
I did not expect to be talking about this tonight.
No, neither did I. But when you get served up 2 games like this, you've got to make your own entertainment. We were going to make it a forfeit on this show that if you got the prediction, if you predicted a game wrong, then you had to watch the next episode and report back. But we'll when there's less cricket on, we might go back to that. But with the volume of cricket on at the moment, watching another cricket themed show would be probably just a bit too much. Anyway, let's carry on with this. England won. I don't know if we've got anything else to say about this game, to be honest, Dan.
No.
England bowled pretty well. Tymal Mills was good.
Yeah, Mills was great. Mo did well again. Well, the only thing I'd probably say is I think Morgan needs to ditch this obsession of using Rashid at weird times.
Yeah, that was odd. That was an odd call. I agree with that. I looked up his Crickmetric stats bowling at the death. They're not awful. It's like a sub-8 economy rate.
How many of them are like 19th over?
Yeah, it's I didn't love it. I mean, a lot of it as well is he's bowled very few overs at the death. A lot, if you have any sample size at all, it's from county cricket. And in some of those games, he might be bowling, to put it kindly, against some less quality opposition.
Yeah, that's it. So you'd want to see who, if he's bowled against set international batters, then it kind of gives that a bit more clarity and context.
Anyway,
yeah. And Malan got a nice red inker. Yeah,
he did. Yeah, number 1 batter in the world. Keep going, Dawid. Bangladesh are probably out, aren't they? They might be slightly less out than the West Indies, but they have to play West Indies, Australia, and South Africa. I can't. They've got a minus 1.6 net run rate. England are virtually through by the same token, plus 3.6, and they need to beat one of the other teams in the group. And I think they could well beat them all, to be honest. So that's that.
It's going to be England have got to win the group because that's the way that they'll probably avoid Pakistan.
Yeah, take down India, no problem. Or qualify. Yeah. So let's quickly predict that one though. So I think England are going to win the group, and I think I've got a sneaky suspicion that it's not really a suspicion, is it? I think Australia are going to get the second spot, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, and I guess we're going to talk about that tomorrow with a prediction at some point. But Sri Lanka have got the bowling to give them a little bit of a tough ride in a low-scoring match. Let's see.
Okay. The second game today was between Namibia and Scotland. Scotland batted first and immediately... Well, let's just say they picked up where they left off. They lost 3 wickets in the opening over. I worked this out. I think they were 38 for 13. over, or 38 for 14 over at that point in the if you combined their performance against Namibia with their performance against Afghanistan. It didn't look pretty. They managed to eventually get up to 109. There was a decent innings in there from what was his name? Was it Greaves? It wasn't Greaves. Greaves did get some runs. Leask, yeah, Michael Leask, before he was bowled by JJ Smith. That was it really, though. The only batter to get going properly was Leask. If he hadn't been there, this game would have finished much earlier, and I would have been much happier. But
would have done his podcast by now.
Yeah. He got 109. In response, Namibia, there's a really funny thing going on in this game. Michael van Lingen, who's got a TFC in the first 3 matches of the tournament, they decided to bowl him and open the batting with him today. So obviously he decided that maybe he's a big shot around the club bar or something like that, pays his subs on time, always drives people to the matches. Maybe he threatened to walk away, and they were like, well, we better give Michael a go in this game then, because he opened up the batting and he got an over in. None of the Namibian batters really got going either, to be honest though, until Visa and Schmidt hit a few boundaries later on. It wasn't a super exciting match. In my mind, this doesn't qualify as a low scoring thriller, but it was entertaining enough that I didn't turn it off and go and make a pizza or something.
Yeah, I actually quite enjoyed the second half of it. It looked sort of like maybe we're going to screw it up a little bit. But then Van Lingen, that was weird. He's actually played 4 T20 and this day matches before today and hasn't scored a single run. So, yeah, very strange.
Yes, it was a bit strange. I think he'd bowled. I don't think he'd ever bowled. Maybe he'd bowled 4 overs or something in T20 cricket. Had an economy of 10. It was basically like they knew they were going to beat Scotland, and they thought, let's give him a chance because he's come all the way to the UAE from Namibia, and it would be a shame if he didn't get to go on the pitch. Did anything stand out in this game from your point of view? Obviously, Namibia bowled really well. Trumpelman, 3 wickets in the first over is always going to cause a little bit of trouble. What's the stat if you take 3 wickets in the power play, you win 70% of matches? What's the stat if you take 3 wickets? I don't even know what
that is now. But it's not as important as winning the boundary percentage count. I can tell you that for nothing.
But what if you take 3 wickets in the first over? Is that more important than the boundary count?
Oh, well, maybe that's the case. Yeah. He'd done well at Northerns before in kind of that semi-pro level in South Africa. So maybe one that kind of got missed out of the South African system to some extent.
Yeah, he bowled well. I thought he was good. Scotland actually had a few decent bowlers as well. Brad Wheel, 4 overs, 14 for 1. Mark Watt. This was actually the moment of the game, I thought. Mark Watt, last 3 matches, 23 for 1, 23 for 1, 23 for 1. He goes into his final over, Dan. He's 19 for 1 at his figures. It's on.
The quattro.
Single first ball, single second ball, single third ball, ... Last ball of the over is a leg side half volley. All fucking Spit has to do is knock it out to the deep square boundary, walk through for a single, and instead he tries to hit it. He tries to hit it into the Arabian Gulf. It misses it and is nearly bowled, and 22 for 1 is what he ends up with today. He's been really good though, Mark Watt. Surely he's going to get a gig in county cricket or at some franchise somewhere around the world in the next 12 months.
Well, yeah, I mean he's done exceptionally well. I mean, I've been aware of him for quite a long time, to be fair. But it wouldn't surprise me if people start taking some punts on him. With regards to like the franchise stuff around the world, I'm always quite kind of a bit reticent to give players too much credit for performances against mediocre opposition.
Might get some Canadian Premier League action.
Maybe. Well, the Euroslam, obviously, he would have been a local player in that. So
he was picked up by the Edinburgh Rocks, wasn't he? But Pornhub's Euroslam, as Ross calls it. It didn't get off the ground.
But he's good. He's very, very good. I love the way that he kind of he's much quicker than that. The usual left arm spinner, good Yorker, and quite unusual kind of player. I think he could go pretty well. But there's a lot of good left-arm spinners at the moment who don't get franchise roles who probably deserve it already. So he's joining a long list at the moment.
Oh, well, I for one hope that we see more Mark Watt
Yeah, definitely.
somewhere next in the world, because he's quite an interesting bowler, I think. I think that sort of is also everything that we had in the way of discussion. I mean, we've talked a lot about Namibia and Scotland today. I'm not doing them down in terms of time on the show, because someone gave us abuse for that the other day. We've been doing daily podcasts basically the whole way through this tournament. We talked a lot about these two teams already. Well played, Namibia. This was probably the big one for as far as these teams go, for this group. The one that they could definitely have they both had a chance of winning. So well done, but we will move on. We had a couple of questions in. One from Nico Marsh, who asks, this is going back to England here. How comfortable are you with England needing 4 overs from Moeen Ali and Livingstone combined, especially against a better side like India or Pakistan, Dan?
They're good bowlers, they're decent bowlers, but of course that you'd prefer sort of 5 regular 4-over bowlers, if that makes sense. Let's see. I'm still unconvinced a bit about this England bowling attack, and that's obviously one question mark too. Jury's out, I think it's fair to say.
Jury's out. Yeah, it is an interesting one. I don't know. I don't think they can really get round it.
No, they can't. Yeah.
So it's sort of what they're stuck with. I think they'll probably try and continue with what they're doing with Moeen and squeeze one of those overs in really early, especially how everyone's playing in this tournament. Nobody's really been prepared to take a power play risk at all. Apart from West Indies, who took so many risks, it bordered on the insane. That's true. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I forgot about them. I think that England will be able to get away with at least one over in the power play every game from Moeen that isn't too costly. I mean, today actually it went for 10 the first one, didn't it? So it cost him a little bit, but they carried on with it and he picked up some wickets. I think that'll be useful. I think the conditions probably, if you have to rely on those two bowlers, probably the UAE is the part of the world that you would want to rely on them. Mm-hmm. So that works in their favour as well. And they have some, I guess, match-up opportunities between them, don't they? Because Livingstone can spin the ball one way, and Moeen. Well, Livingstone can spin the ball both ways, but can bowl leg spin. And Moeen Ali obviously is a pretty good bowler against left-handed batters. So I think there are some options there. I mean, I don't know if it's absolutely ideal, but I would put it in the same bracket as Australia. The strength you gain from being able to have the absolute hold on, I need to preface this with saying this. I'll explain what I mean about the Australia point in a second. The strength England gain from having Moeen Ali and Livingstone in the side and as batters and batting all the way down the order and being super dominant in that area more than makes up for the possibility that one of them goes for 15 in one of their 4 overs, or that their expected runs per ball is 0.1 higher than the next player. I don't know, who even would they put David Willey? Is David Willey going to produce much better statistical output than those two combined? I don't know. So it's probably net neutral. But you get the huge bonus of the batting, and I think it's on Australia. And we'll briefly talk about this. Segues nicely into their match tomorrow, actually, and then we'll wrap up the show. On Australia, they're doing this thing, aren't they, with Maxwell and Stoinis, or Maxwell and Marsh maybe, having to pick up 4 of their overs. And I think it makes sense for them as well, because the other 4 overs are bankers from Australia's point of view. You can probably get away with 1 or 2 Maxwell overs in the power play, because everyone's playing so timidly there. And then between the other 2, squeeze 2 middle overs in. And they'll be all right. And it means, from Australia's point of view here, England, it means they put out a monster batting lineup. From Australia's point of view, it means that their kind of mediocre crap batting lineup bats quite deep, so they, in theory, aren't out of games as early as they might be. Anyway, looking forward to tomorrow. There's just one match, isn't it? It's Australia v Sri Lanka. Dan, you said you had some thoughts on this. Do you want to just let us know what they are, and then we'll pack up
quickly before we do move on to that. That's all right. Looking at Scotland, it's just one thing about Scotland is, a lot of the time I have copped a little bit of abuse. I'm not going to lie on Twitter about being a bit of an intent merchant, and people are like, well, what happens if you keep hitting and people say, oh, you're better off just like nerdling it around and stuff as opposed to keep hitting, yeah? Well, Scotland, they nerdled it around. Cross 19 off 33 balls. Wallace 4 off 13 balls. And they required a guy to hit 44 off 27 balls at a strike rate of 163 just to get 109. That's what happens when you play risk-averse cricket.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can get rolled for 55 like the West Indies, but let me tell you right now, the other approach is no better. That is no better in terms of expected win percentage. No chance. And you've got the upside if you hit and you do get lucky. Someone plays an unbelievable innings.
But to be honest, if Scotland had managed to put 125, they might have won that game, I think. But they used they to get to 125. I think they needed to score 10 and over for 8 overs.
Their top five, faced 50 balls and scored 1-4.
Yeah, I am overall more happy to let Scotland off the hook for this though.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about that. No doubt about that.
Than like Bangladesh,
than Bangladesh, for example, who are like a 4-member nation and have massive franchise leaguers in their home country. No excuse. Absolutely no excuse. Scotland, different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, a complete tangent there. We'll talk about Australia, but yeah.
No. So Australia v Sri Lanka is the match happening tomorrow. What are your thoughts on that?
My first thought is that I'm going to be on tilt again real soon tomorrow when Josh Inglis is left out again. Because like, I mean, honestly, how you look at this Australia batting lineup, and I look at it, I've got no fear apart from Maxwell at all. How on earth they think that Langer thinks that Josh Inglis is not better than anyone apart from Maxwell? I've got no idea at all. And yeah, I will say it's 95% certain that he's not going to play again tomorrow. So that's going to be great. And do you know what? I'm going to be really honest with you. I really want them to get punished for it. I really badly want them to get punished for it. I'm not a big buyer of Sri Lanka. I know we both said that on the pod previously, but I'd love to see Sri Lanka win tomorrow. I think that from reports, Thiksana is going to be back as well tomorrow. So they've got 8 overs of pretty decent spin between him and Hasaranga. Aussies are traditionally probably not the best players of spin. Some of them, especially, I can't see. Well, Mitch Marsh got pretty bad numbers against spin. I can't see Steve Smith smashing them out of the park. So there's a good chance of a middle order slowdown. Biggest issue for Sri Lanka will be batting. One of the batters is going to have to somehow come off. At least they won't be picking Chandimal, so that's a positive start. I think it's going to be. I'd love to see Sri Lanka boss a low scorer.
That would be quite funny. I've got to take exception with one thing you said there. You said Mitch Marsh wasn't a particularly good player of spin. Mitch Marsh might be the galaxy's worst player of spin.
Oh, sorry, I was being a bit kind to him.
I couldn't. Yeah, unbelievable that they think that's the answer in the UAE. But I just think Australia will get through because I think the group's weak. And I don't.
Yeah, no, you're probably right.
I don't think they will get punished.
They'll probably use that as like a vindication of their strategy somehow as well, which is like utterly shambolic in my opinion.
Yeah, as Akash says in the chat though, if Sri Lanka bowl first, they probably do have a decent chance of winning because Australia will end up putting 125 on the board and being like, yeah.
Would like to see that.
I think teams have just got to look at that so much differently. Batting first, you've got like it's. If you were chasing 145 to win, and that should be, I think, the minimum you ever try and put on the board in these tournaments, you wouldn't be 2 wickets down in the power play and then shut up shop for 10 overs, and leave yourself a situation where you need to score 12 and over for the back half or whatever. Maybe not 12 and over, but like you know what I mean. Like 10 and over for the last 9 overs to get to 145. You wouldn't do that. You'd be like, well, we can't completely forget about scoring runs. But so many teams batting first lose 1 wicket and they're like, right, that's it. Get your deck chairs out, lads. We're gonna have a little relax here. Take the pace off. Yeah. I mean, people say there probably is a conditions based bias, but there's also a stupidity based bias to how some of these teams go. And people are saying, well, let's see how England do batting first. I think if England batted first today, they'd have scored about 165 and won by 20 runs. Bangladesh would have done better. but I don't think England would have
It
lost
made
that
no
match.
difference. England would have won that game easily still. Not 9 times out of 10 or 8.5 times out of 10.
Yep. And they, Bangladesh could have. They had the opportunity to see that in action, but they decided to turn it down. Let's wrap up the podcast now. If you're watching, just hit like really quickly. Hit subscribe if you're enjoying our YouTube stuff. We're also on Patreon, patreon.com/thecricketpod. Head over there to become a Patreon. And we're on Twitter all day. Twitter. Well, I don't know. You can never really come off Twitter, can you? It's addictive.
Only on my phone anyway.
Yeah. Twitter is @thecricketpod. We will be back tomorrow with Australia v Sri Lanka.